What is up, everybody? Welcome to this next build of, you guessed it, the Focke-Wulf 190D9 by Cockpit. This was an exceptional build picked by you, and I am so happy to finally have done it. It takes a while to get around to the airplanes if you pick a B-26 or big airplane, so it took me a while to get here, but I'm here. I finally built this one for you. I put the poll out, like, I don't know, a few months ago, and finally got around to this bad boy. So this was a fun project for me to tackle the white and red and make it look realistic. But I added a couple things that I also was waiting in the mail for this Focke-Wulf. I wanted to use the 3D decals for ultra realism, and so let's just get started here. So we're getting into the cockpit area for the 3D decals. You have to trim off the excess, all the detailed parts that are in the Tamiya kit, and so that you're able to glue the 3D decals onto the surface of the plastic here. So that's what I'm doing. I'm just trimming off the actual plastic, and then you take a file and sand down. It doesn't have to be perfectly smooth. It doesn't have to be absolutely perfect. Honestly, using a file is perfect because it like kind of etches it so that the super glue kind of wicks in a little bit better, because I actually super glued these to the actual plastic. It just makes it a little bit stick better than just having it water. I don't think it sticks at all if it's just the water, so use super glue on that. But sand all your edges, cut off all your parts, and we can get into building the actual interior of the aircraft. The seat is pretty nicely detailed. I like the cushion and how it has a bunch of indents in it, so that just contributes to the ultra realism of it. And if you saw my short for this video, you can see how long it took me to actually build the canopy because I couldn't figure out which way those parts went in together. Anyways, priming it with some Mr. Hobby Black and then going in with some dark gray for the German interior. I don't know if this is exactly the right color, but I like the color, and also it really stands out against the camouflage when it's all done. Next, I'm painting the seat with some brown, some different VELLEJO browns to give it that ultra realism, and then other parts with some different VELLEJO colors, some really colors that stand out a lot. So I painted the first coat with yellow, and then a second coat with red just to make it like kind of stand out, but it kind of didn't work. So the red wasn't as see-through as I thought. Next, I'm picking up these 3D decals and putting the instrument panel on with some super glue here. I use Gorilla Super Glue from Home Depot. That's the stuff that I use every single day, and I absolutely love it. It's super cheap and it's really easy to get. There's no waiting around or having to go 20 miles to a hobby shop, even though I firmly support hobby shops for glues and stuff like that. I typically just end up getting the super glue because I end up running out. Put in all these instrument panels, and I just love how realistic they look. It is totally cheating. I totally believe that it's cheating, but I don't even care because it looks awesome, and it just is super. I mean, honestly, you're looking at 10 bucks just to have a nice, easy cockpit to do. So it's like, who doesn't want to do that? If you have a bunch of airplane shirts like me and want some more airplane shirts like me, definitely go into the shop below, the YouTube shop, and grab yourself a ResMod t-shirts. I have a bunch of different styles. Up some ResMod t-shirts today. There's a whole bunch of different colors, different kinds. We even have sweatshirts, crew necks, t-shirts, anything you could possibly think of. We have a few different lines. We have the Resurrection Modeler line in a few different colors, and we also have the Dream Build line, which I love. That's my personal favorite. We all dream it and we build it. That's what we do here. We resurrect things together. And please pick up some merch for yourself. Make it messy so you don't mess up the clothes that your wife bought you and then she's mad. And build some airplanes, dude. Thank you guys so much for supporting the channel. Another way you can support it is actually watch the video all the way through, so until you see the actual product at the end, so you're able to see the airplane that I built. And that just helps the algorithm out so much. Thank you guys. Let's get back to building. So after that wonderful merch ad, we're gonna go ahead and attach these little tiny knobs to the interior here. And this is really cool. These come with with the actual kit too, and they're really easy to install. You dab a little bit of super glue and it sticks right on. Next, I'm gonna fuse this fuselage together, and it didn't stick together as much or as well as I'd like compared to other Tamiya kits, but obviously it's a Tamiya kit, so you're gonna have a couple seams to deal with, and that's okay with me. I don't mind. It went together really well. Obviously, it did fit together. It just wasn't as crisp as usual. You know, sometimes those Tamiya kits, they like just snap and click together. This one wasn't like that. Anyways, not really a big deal. I'm not complaining. I'm just saying that's just the way it went. Next, I can finally assemble some of these other things in the interior and pop the cockpit inside. If you want to see a more detailed look at the picture, go through my videos and you can find a short of me assembling this, and you'll see the actual final product of the actual cockpit and the seat and everything. It turned out really good, especially with those interior 3D decals, and it's so awesome. Not only the fact that it's literally looks amazing when you do those interior 3D decals, it is just so easy. I mean, I could spend 3 days on a cockpit if I wanted to without those interior decals. But the interior decals, just 1 day. Not even a day. It's like 2 hours and the cockpit's done. It's like I can't even argue with that, especially being a YouTuber. So getting the cockpit done and looking like a real cockpit is my goal, and that's what helps me do it, is buying cheap stuff to make my life easier, and that's awesome. Next, I can do some final assembly of the wings and all the good stuff in there. The wings went together really well. There was no seams whatsoever, but this wing was a little bit warped, which really is not a big deal in this day and age with the Tamiya glue and all the other stuff you can get. It doesn't fit so well that you don't need any skill to put these pieces together. You do still have to assemble piece by piece and section by section to make sure that every single piece gets glued and honestly kind of melted together. But after you do that, let it dry, and then you can sand out with some 1000 grit sandpaper, which is what I'm using here, and also some 1000 grit sandpaper to do the little corners. And honestly, at this point, I would just snip those guns off. I honestly don't think that you need to keep those on throughout the whole entire build, as they're really annoying, and I broke one off anyways, so I would just snip those off and re-glue them on later if you wanted to do that. That's probably going to be the easier way to do it. Next, I can put on these wings, and they fit beautifully, snapped in just like that, and just an amazing feat to get the wings a nice fit like that. I really like that. Then you can install the horizontal stabs. Hey guys, starting February 7th, I'm going to unlock premium content. That means you have to be a member to see this premium content, but I'm super excited to go through all the topics and stuff we're gonna do at the bench over that channel. So just sign up to be a member if you wanna see more videos every single month. I'll be posting every Saturday starting February 7th, and we're gonna go into some crazy stuff. Highly detailed things and different models, building stuff, and just hanging out. So obviously there's a lot of features that you get with being a member, and you just want to sign up for that just because it's awesome. Buy me a cup of coffee and we'll dive deeper into the bench. My first topic that we're going to go through in the month of February is going to be building a model in 30 days with only spending less than an hour at the bench. It's super fun, and I just can't wait to share it with you guys. So join along and we'll have some fun. So let's just get back to building now. Alright, so getting into the actual landing gear bay area, I primed with some light gray and then went over with some RLM green, and this is a light RLM green or something, and that way it kind of just stands out from the actual colors. Honestly, I looked at pictures. I couldn't really find a lot of good pictures, but the one at the Smithsonian looked like it had this light green color, and then I just weathered it to the eye's touch and just went at it with a sponge, man. That's really all I pretty much do for this area, as you can't really see it when it's in the display cabinet anyways, so it doesn't really matter. And I don't put my models on mirrors, so really can't see underneath it. But I like to do at least a little bit of stuff to it to make it realistic. So then I went ahead and put a wash on the inside. This is the Starship wash from AK, And this stuff is really, really great. I really like this Starship wash. It's almost like a reddish brown, and that I'm gonna carry through that the rest of the build. So everything that I'm using has a reddish tint to it, kind of like a, I don't know, a German dirt or something like that. Just going through for something a little bit different than just the regular brown that I put in every airplane. So I did a little bit of a reddish brown on this Focke-Wulf everywhere, which turned out really nice. So you'll see it in the end. So I dabbed a little bit of rust onto my sponge, and then I dabbed a bunch of dirt onto the sponge and just kind of rubbed it everywhere inside those wheel wells to make it look really, really dirty, and just make it look like it had some wear and tear. Again, I could go, I could go in further with more details in this inner area, but I typically just don't, because you can't even see it anyways. So, but what I did, I really, really liked. I liked the finish that this model makeup, I call, actually gives to the model, and then I went ahead and re-rendered that on the actual landing gear covers as well. So then you can have that fully cohesive thing that makes it look like that's in the same area when it's flying. And yeah, so it worked out really, really well. And I also put a little bit of tan in there to highlight a little bit of that. I use an alcohol pad to wipe away the excess paint off of the edge of the wheel wells there, so that I'm just working with a nice new area when I go ahead and use my primers and all that stuff for the rest of the model. So once that's all cleaned up, I know it seems like a useless step, but it just helps out a little bit with my taste and my liking to do the airbrushing, so that everything has a cohesive look. Next, I'm putting the masking set that I bought on this. I typically don't like these vinyl masking sets. I don't feel like they're as good as the Tabuki tape, but I couldn't even find a Tabuki tape like Edward masking set for this aircraft in particular. So I just went ahead and bought this this masking set, which it did work great. It worked fine. There's nothing wrong with it. I just typically prefer the Tabuki tape. It sticks better, and the corners don't raise on it after, a couple days. So if you're gonna use this stuff, use it within a couple days, paint your stuff, and then get it over with, and then take it off, because it kind of peels up in the corners. Like it's really rigid tape, and it just comes off sometimes. Without buying another masking tape, this step just takes 10 times as long, and it also kind of is a model mojo killer for me, because it just puts a stump in me wanting to be at my bench. I don't like doing the actual taping off everything, so just spending $5 on a little masking set is it's gonna make your build go a lot quicker if you don't like doing this step, because you're just not gonna sit there and go, man, I don't want to tape and cut my clear plastic and all that stuff. Next, after I painted everything, all the cockpit, the interior as well, I put some micro liquid tape on the inside. So this is a key point for aircraft of this nature here, of stuff that is double-sided tape. You want to use this liquid tape for the double-sided, because that canopy has to come off in order for you to take the tape out of it. It's too small in there with tweezers even. So I use the micro liquid tape, I stick it on, and then I stick it on the model, and then take it right off, let it dry, and then I go back and stick it back on the model. And that's where you see it stick, for the remainder of the video until I take it off and put the wiring on. So this process works great, and that liquid tape sticks really good. It's not gonna fall off if you use a decent amount, and then I go ahead and prime it black. So now I'm on to the next fatal step of this aircraft, which was very, very difficult and really annoying. I completely did this wrong, but in the end, I finally got it to be perfectly white. And that's all that it needs to be said about it. I don't need to explain to you how many coats it took, over 1,000, and I don't need to explain to you that basically ruined every panel line in the aircraft, but now you know. Anyways, now that it's perfectly white, I can go ahead and stick this tape on. So this is tape I found at Hobby Lobby. It is literally the perfect size for this aircraft, and I just did a 1-to-1 scale of the tape onto the instructions and seen if it was actually perfect, and it was. So I used that tape as basically a guide, because actually you don't really want to use this tape on your aircraft. It's not really the best for airplanes, for any type of light paint. It kind of tears it all off. So lightly put it on your aircraft, and then you can measure it out. This is the only way that I found to measure it out. It turns out that the tape I'm using is the Tabuki tape from Tamiya. This stuff is literally the perfect size for the stripes, and I'm just using it as a measuring tool basically to put these stripes down. After doing this, this was actually a really easy step, honestly. This was very, very simple to do, and highly recommend this process. It put the stripes in a perfect position. As long as you put the stripe in the perfect spot at the beginning, it ended up in a perfect spot. And then there's just 2 big stripes that run along the main of the fuselage. And honestly, I thought this was going to be a lot more painful than it was. It really wasn't painful at all. It was really easy, and I enjoyed the process, actually. This is the only part of it I enjoyed, because when I peeled the tape, well, you'll see. You'll see exactly what I had to convince myself of in the end after this thing. So, yeah, you'll see what happens. But doing this process wasn't that bad, and since there was like 20 coats of white on it, it wasn't going to peel at all since I had that on. I did gloss coat it before I taped it as well. Next, I'm going to go in with some pre-shading, and I'm pre-shading with some dark German brown. This stuff actually worked really good as a base coat for the red. Just basically, it's kind of darker than the red in general, so it ended up being nice panel lines when I do the final coat of red. After that was all said and done, it was really sloppy. I just did it really quick because this red's going to cover the majority of it. So we're going to paint this whole surface red. Getting the red to actually cover took about 5 coats as well, but I ended up adding a little bit of that brown color to the red to make it cover a little bit better. I added like 3 drops of brown to a full cup of red and did 3 coats, and it covered beautifully, and you can still see those nice panel lines. But as I'm peeling the tape, you can see that all of the paint bled through, and it does not look nice at all. It doesn't look like crisp white lines. It doesn't look good at all. So I made the justification to myself to convince myself that this airplane was painted by somebody who doesn't like to paint or just really sucks at painting, and that's the history of it. I'm going to show you how to fix this really quick and in a second, but we're just going to see all these lines peeled up and came up, and in certain areas it peeled up the white paint too, so even the primer. So this is why I don't like the vinyl tape. I don't know what I'm doing wrong to make the vinyl tape just fail every time, but it does. Without, well, I don't know, I'm cursed or something with the vinyl tape, because every single time it fails on me. I prime it, I paint it, I do all the stuff, I make sure everything's good, blah, blah, blah. But this is the only way that I found to straighten out those lines just a little bit, and then we can just all imagine that they painted the stripes with a brush. And then it looks realistic, because they definitely see some brush marks. But I just used a new part of the cotton swab to just wipe away that red, and it cleaned up the lines a lot. So it made it to where it wasn't looking like it was a model and painted through and bled through, and it looked like something a little bit more realistic. Next, I can go ahead and airbrush my first color, which was RLM light blue, and this color is a really, really awesome color to paint. It covers well, and there's not much you have to do to it. I add some white to it to add some differentiation in the panel lines, and some just rudder things, and just go around some different areas just to add to that weathering process. And then I continue to the next color. But I'm using a Grex airbrush here, and it's just a 0.5 millimeter. I'm just being real careful. It's really thinned out, and all I did was just add some white, add some thinner to it, and then just briefly go over the panel lines. Now you can see some overspray and stuff. I go back later and just take care of that overspray so that you don't see that on the light blue. And it's super easy if you use regular colors to do that, and just keep track of what colors you mix with, and that way you can replicate the process. But I still am using the 0.5 millimeter to do this line, and it honestly, from the pictures, it looks like a straight line. As much as possible, I tried to make it a perfectly straight line. So here I'm using the German RLM gray-green from VELLEJO and just airbrushing it. I'm using a 0.5 millimeter, about 18 air pressure. It's nice and thinned out, and I just do a bunch of coats until it's done. I roughly outline the actual camo of where it is, and this is a very, very sprayed out and sparse camo. So I just went over it. I wanted a nice feathered edge for the camo, and then I went into my other color after that was done. Now, I go back 3 or 4 times and touch up the places that are oversprayed. To me, that process is actually pretty easy. I don't mind doing it, and I'd rather just go around and do as much as possible around the aircraft everywhere in a lump sum, and then go ahead and do my detail work later. So that's what I do in this. So going over this dark green actually kind of was a mistake. I would recommend doing the lighter color first and then the darker color, but it kind of depends on your camo scheme and what you want to tape off and what's easier to tape and stuff like that. So that's why I ended up doing the darker color first, is because of what I had to tape off, which was that front cowling piece there in front of the windshield. Next, I do the RLM light blue in the middle section, and it looked like on the instructions it was actually like a more tanner thing. So I actually added some sand tan by Vallejo to the light blue mix. And this actually made some really good coverage, and it allowed it to really bring out some nice blues and tans in the finished color, which I think that's exactly what I was looking and going for. So I ended up doing that on this midsection here. And yeah, I think it turned out pretty much exactly what the instructions looked like after I had, weathered it and all that stuff. But I wanted a nice and high contrasting area here, so just spraying this around with that light tan was pretty sweet and satisfying. It made a different look to most camouflages, in my opinion. It kind of had a hard line on the tail section there, and it had a hard line up near the front of the canopy, making like a nice tan box looking in the middle of it. And then I went around and did some panel line shading. I did a harsher panel line shade here because I'm going to do a green and gray-green tan or a camo line. So that was going to kind of muddle up the surface, and you'll see these panel lines actually dumb out when I do the camo here. So I'm going over with the light green first this time, and just going around and exactly just making sure I don't go too much and too hard, and just making big blotches everywhere, just making sure to just keep it on the down low and work my way around the aircraft as easily, as nicely as possible. The paint's thinned out a lot more than usual. It's thinned out to about 80-20 to get the paint nice and thin. So what that happens with Vallejo paints is it actually causes you to have more splatters and crap like that. So you really have to be careful. If you're splattering too much, just turn your pressure down if you have really thin paint, and just go over it 1,000 times. That's literally the process. You can see those panel lines that are really nice. They came out really good. And then you just cover it all up with this camo, which is okay because they were pretty harsh. But basically I'm just going around and modeling and doing different things with the airbrush to make it look weathered and like it was an actual camouflage scheme. After the green was done, I went ahead and did the gray-green, and I basically just went over some areas where I did the previous camouflage, and then wherever there was a light spot, I actually just added a little bit of that green color in. As the picture of the aircraft that I found online, it was very muddled and muddy in this section here, so I just did my best and went around as much as I could to make it look like the camo scheme that I wanted, and it turned out pretty good. And against the brown, it actually turned it into kind of a different color, and then against the blue, kind of turns it into a more greenish color. So it was pretty neat to see the outcome of that as well. And again, I'm using very thinned out paint here. It's all Vallejo, all 0.5 millimeter, all 18 psi, pretty much, maybe less than that. And I'm just going around and getting her done. The camo is very stressful, but if you have patience, this is a much easier process. So now we can enjoy some tape peeling here. Now I do see, like, using the vinyl tape, it peeled off everywhere. Like, there's a whole bunch of spots that peeled off, and I always say, oh, use the Tabuki tape because it won't peel off anything. That's just not true. That is not true at all. So I think sometimes I'm a bit heavy-handed with paint, and I think when I am heavy-handed with paint and have big spots of paint, it peels right off. These are all the drip spots. where the paint would actually be dripping down. So I'm highly convinced that if you have too much paint on the aircraft and you put tape over it, it will peel it off because it has too much paint on. So this is a note I'm taking down in the future to thin out my paints a little bit more and take some more time while airbrushing and not be so heavy-handed with the airbrush. I must have had the airplane lean to one side because this side didn't peel at all, which I wish that happened for the other side, but it didn't. So I go back and adjust those and fix them. I literally just use a brush and paint some red on it, and it blended right in. You can't even tell anymore. But the camouflage scheme looks so nice and so good. It's exactly what I was going for, and I just love it when projects come out like that. They just look exactly what you were coming out as, and they just look great. So I'm really happy with the finish of it. It could have used a little modeling. In my opinion, it could have used a little bit more effort with the pre-shading for the camouflage, but I'm going to tackle that in the weathering stage, so you'll see what I do for that. Next, I'm applying the decals, and I just use the simple basic microsol and microset solutions to apply the decals and use a cotton swab to squeeze out the water beneath them, and it sets them right in place, and then I put on the microset. So this is awesome stuff. It never has failed me yet. I like to say yet after never, because when in doubt, it usually does after you say never. So then I do a wash after I do a gloss coat. Now this is my panel line coat, and then after I do the panel line coat, I spray it with matte, and then I do the rest of the weathering, as I don't want to muddle the silvering, and I don't want to mess up any of the other stuff, like the shades of the model makeup and stuff. So I'm using a light brown wash here, and just to go into all the panel lines, and I noticed that it really didn't have a nice, like, defined look on all the panel lines. Wasn't standing out to me as much, so I went ahead and actually grabbed some neutral color, and this actually brightened it up a little bit and made those panel lines look a little bit dusty. And I always use that in the interiors of gray cockpits, the neutral panel line wash. And it usually works out pretty good to make it look dusty, dirty. And since this dark green and green was so deep, I really couldn't find a darker color. So I put that lighter color in, and that made those panel lines pop. I put some enamel thinner on and just brush it over the whole model just to give it a nice base. And this is pretty much my weathering technique. I'm not a big fan of weathering. To be honest, I'm not a big fan. But you know, I feel like I have to do it on every model because it does look so much better with a nice sheen on it, with a nice a wash on it. So now I'm just rubbing the excess off with a paper towel, just being careful to use the very base of my fingertip, and then once you rub it off, you kind of sand it at the same time, so it actually gives it a nice faded look, and then you can go ahead and do your matte coat over that. Next, I do the engine parts, and it is highly satisfying to do this. I'm using the same wash I used on the rest of the aircraft, this reddish brown kind of look, Starship wash, and it just looks so nice when tackling all these different parts. I also went ahead and did a black wash on top of this as well to give it that extra oily look. And that way it just kind of stood out as being a used engine. Sometimes paint silver stuff and it's just not weathered enough. It's like, yeah, that'd probably be a little bit more dirty. Now I can finally pop the cowling on and get the rest of this project done. This thing ended up being actually sweet for how upset I was with the white lines. I'm not gonna lie, I think this was a really fun project and I really did enjoy building this D9. I think they're a beautiful aircraft. I really love the shape, and I love the just the pure history behind the D9. I think it's just so interesting, and it's so fun to just go back and rebuild some of these awesome airplanes. The prop assembly was super easy and it just went together fine, and now we can get into some of these next weathering steps. It also spins, and I love the fact that it spins. It's really tough to spin, so you want to make sure that your prop is super glued on properly. Next, I can put in the exhaust pipes into the actual airplane, and I just brush painted those little square lines that you see on there. I just brush painted them in the same color as the cowling, and that ended up blending in, especially when you're doing the whole black wash and everything for the exhaust stain, so that it blends in just fine. Next, I'm peeling, so you can see how well that stuck to the actual airplane. I peel that off, and then I'm able to actually peel off. And you're gonna see a bit of dirtiness here because of the actual, the vinyl tape that kind of didn't work, which it never really has worked. I always have cleaning up to do with vinyl tape. With Tabuki tape, I don't think I've ever had to clean up other than a few corners, but with this vinyl tape, I always have to clean a bunch of stuff up, which is fine. I don't mind doing it. It's really easy. You just take a toothpick and you go to town with some, well, you don't go to town, but you put a little bit of alcohol on a swab, and then you go ahead and swipe the main area without touching any green or gray, and then you go back with a toothpick with it dipped into the swab, and you scratch and scrape the surface until it's all off. But I mean, all these straight and corner pieces ended up being great. A little bit of it peeled up because there's just too much paint on the aircraft. That was my mistake of this aircraft, is just putting too much paint on it. But with red and white, what do you expect? I don't know. Yeah, I couldn't tell you how to do white, I guess. I thought I had it nailed, and then sure enough, 20 coats later, it just wasn't nailed. And then once you're done with that cockpit piece, you just stick it right back in the airplane. Like, there's no filling seams or anything like that. It fits fine. So using that micro liquid tape or whatever it is literally your best friend when doing complicated pieces like this with doing the inside of the actual the canopy there. So all right, so let's get into some silvering techniques here. I'm using a sponge, and this is very, very technical. I honestly think that this is the most technical thing I do in the whole build. Screw airbrushing. You can fix airbrushing. You can fix this too, but you typically don't want to rub your finger all over everything because it kind of leaves a shiny sheen, as I did on this aircraft, and I'm kind of mad about it. You won't notice it in the pictures, but typically I'm just dabbing this tiny little sponge piece like a few times, and then dabbing it off onto a paper towel like 4 times, 5 times maybe, and then I go into my work here. So I'm not taking all the paint off because that ruins the texture of the sponge. If you want a really blended texture, then take it all off and dry brush it on there. Then you get a nice blended texture, and you have to dab it 1,000 times to get this really, really soft aluminum texture. But if you want nice chipped edges and stuff like that, you want to dab it like 4 times. Make sure that there's still paint on the inside of theirs. And if you get extra off, you can rub it off. You can take a cotton swab with your mouth and, you know, just lick it off, you know, as we all do, and get rid of whatever you don't like. And I had to do that a few times because it's hard to judge with a sponge exactly what you're getting out of it. You know, it's like it goes too much, and then you twist it a tiny bit, and then it's a different part of the sponge, and it's like impossible to not get a bunch of crap on there. And that tended to happen a little bit here on this one. Next, I take a tiny piece of sponge and dab it only like twice, and then I dab it only twice on the paper towel, and you can see how much comes off of it. So I'm just trying to give different textures here on the corners of the panel lines to accent those areas and other areas too. But typically I just try to make it look as real as possible. Like, okay, this panel opens, so I want the guys to seem like this panel opened a lot and they shoved their backpack in there. And this panel was like a gas thing, or this panel was service more than the other panels. And I went around doing that, basically doing it to the whole airplane. I stayed away from the tail section, but not that much. Like, the wings were the busiest part, so I just paid most attention to my wings and my cowling, and if they were going to do engine work or reload the guns, it probably had a lot of chipping on the wings if they're reloading the guns and all that good stuff. I went at this technique from a different perspective than I usually do. I usually just kind of try to get it over with. And this time I really sat down, I took my time, and I went around and really thought out which panel would be best for me to kind of scratch the surface with this. this technique with, and I think that came out a lot better. Instead of me just trying to go and get it over with, I think me taking my time and being patient with this step was really beneficial. Any area I really didn't like immediately, I just wiped off immediately, like I'm about to do here, because I didn't like the effect that it was doing here. I actually switched sponges after this, but you can see it kind of hue up a little bit with the silver, but you can wash it off completely if you're quick enough. So you got to be quick on deciding whether you like the technique and the finish that you're getting on it. I re-dipped it, re-dabbed it, and just got a new piece and then started over again on a different area. And that's kind of that was the trick, is to, if I didn't like an area, I stopped, I went to a different area and just started fresh with a new sponge and got on with the build. I didn't spend too much time in one singular area, and yeah, so I dabbed this 3 or 4 times and then really, really lightly just trickled and kind of just worked my way down the wing, making it look kind of rough. I wanted to chip this up pretty good. I wanted to give some differentiation between my latest build and this build, which the latest build was all aluminum, so I didn't get to do this technique, and I do like doing this technique. It's challenging, it's difficult, it's technical, and yeah, here you can see on the prop, it's so satisfying to watch. But you can see the sponge really work its magic on the prop for sure. On corners, on props, on raised edges, this is going to be your best friend to use a sponge. But on flat surfaces, it really is not your best friend. It's really tricky to get a nice, like, I want to say pattern, because it's just not natural to see, you know, the identification marks of a sponge on a flat surface. Like, you can tell that you dabbed it with a sponge. So doing it on flat surfaces is a lot more tricky. That's why I used a really tiny sponge for that. But I just go about and do the props in different types of ways. I only chip the one side. I feel like that's fair to just chip the one side, and then I go through another weathering process later about the prop. But I also do the spinner as well, as that probably would have been chipped up pretty good too. I use VELLEJO aluminum to do all my chipping work. I just feel like it comes out the best. It's nice and smooth, and it's not pixelated at all. You can't see any like anything. It's just a nice color to chip with, especially with a sponge. It's really easy to use. It's easy to wipe off, so can't really blame that. There was a little bit of part here that tore off with the tape, so I just went ahead with a brush and used that aluminum paint and dipped that brush into aluminum paint. This brush is actually dried up in a hard brush. It's not a soft brush at all, and I wanted to use that to kind of get some different types of textures with the brush. I think I could do scratches and stuff with stiff brushes a lot better than a soft brush. So if I use a soft brush and try to scratch, it ends up leaving like a brush mark, and it makes it look like I literally brushed silver onto the airplane. So I use this hard brush to make it look very, very like streaky and cracky and stuff like that. Then I use the sponge, very lightly dipped, and just muddle that surface up as much as possible to break up any brush marks that I have with the hard brush. Next, I use this same sponge, re-dip it, re-dab it, and then go through on these little panels that kind of look like hinges. I think they might be hinges. I'm not sure exactly. I think they might be hinges. And just went around, and I obviously didn't like that. That last one was a lot. See, it's just hard to gauge the sponge. It's just difficult. So I didn't like it, wiped it right off, super easy, and then went back into it. I wasn't upset at that one, so I didn't have to stop myself and go to a different part of the airplane. But I used different little scratches and different directions, and I actually liked that direction there, so I kept that one in. That was a nice little scratch. It was a nice, perfect imperfection. The toughest thing with doing chips and stuff like that is actually making a random pattern, and that is the most difficult things for humans to do. We like everything nice and organized, neat, and perfect. And obviously, here I go again. I did it again. Went in way too hot, way too heavy, and just chucked it right at the airplane. It looks like they splattered paint, like those artist scenes that you see on Facebook. And then just muddled it up with a sponge and then went around. Next, I'm doing the cowling piece, as I looked a little bit empty since I didn't do the cowling, so I went back at it. And you can see one part of the sponge is really wet and the rest is not, and that gives a great, perfect impression of a perfectly imperfect pattern. And that's kind of what you're going for. As I said before, it's hard to actually make random patterns. It's much easier to make a straight pattern, a straight and narrow checkerboard, a straight and narrow, anything like that. It's harder for our brains to wrap around doing something random. So when I'm going around these panel lines, I'm using different sides of the sponges. I'm ripping and tearing it sometimes to break up the pattern of the sponge, and I'm dibbing and dabbing it a bunch of different times so that a different pattern shows up on the aircraft at all times. See, one side sometimes I'm painting the corner of it, and sometimes I'm painting the center of it, but here I'm just dabbing a lot of it on there to make a nice pattern for where the pilot actually walks around in the aircraft. So that's going to be a little bit more weathered. And I tried to just recreate some of the things I've actually seen other people make, but yeah, I mean, mastering this silvering technique is just, I think it's probably the most complex thing to actually master, the most technical thing to master, because you can go too far, you can go too little, and sometimes some areas just don't look right. But using the sponge, I think I found the best result. So this is the first part of the weathering, or second part of the weathering process. I already did my panel lines, and now I did this silvering technique after the matte varnish was already on the model. And now I did this silvering technique, basically going around all those panel lines on the bottom as well. The bottom didn't end up quite as well as the others, but this issue with the decals being a lighter white than the actual white lines was an issue, so I took some rust and some brown and just rubbed it all over those decals and then rubbed it off with my finger. That's how easy this stuff is to work with. If I licked my finger and then rubbed it on the airplane, all of it would come off, which I didn't want. I just wanted a nice dirty white, just like the lines were, and that actually made it look exactly like the white lines on the bottom. So then I just repeated this process throughout the whole airplane on all the decals, making sure that they were all hit with this reddish brown color, so it kind of blended in with an older, kind of dirty paint scheme, if you will. And I think that finish on those decals just really make it look like a wartime vehicle. I think that this step is the step to separate other models from yours. It just makes the decals look worn in just like the paint, and that really honestly is the best step you could do. If you don't do this, the decals can look shiny, or they can kind of stand out, but definitely a good step to do and it's really easy. You just put it on and then rub it off the finger. You can't really go wrong with that. It's better than messing with pignets and trying to, use oil and crap, and this is just so easy to use. Next, I use the same method on the exhaust. And so basically right now I'm taking the rust color from the oil and soot line of the Tamiya Weathermaster and just brushing it in a way where it looks like it's going to stream down the streamline of the airplane, and kind of just get it all over those exhaust stacks, because those could be a burnt type of umber type of look. So next, I just dab it in the next color, which is black, and then I'm gonna fade that into this streamline as well. And I'm using really light pressure here. I'm just kind of wanting to just really lightly brush across the airframe, and that seems to me that makes the best, smoothest kind of line for it. It kind of like makes it look like it happened naturally. But if you mess up here with any of this stuff, you can literally wipe it off just with some water, like I'm doing here. I got a little bit above the exhaust stacks there, and I didn't like to finish that. I wanted that line from the light blue to the green really prominent, so I took it away from that area with a cotton swab and just some spit. And that seems to work pretty good. But If I wanted to go back into it, I could. Like I said, this is a really easy process. It's the easiest way I've found to do exhaust stains, and at this point, I wouldn't even attempt an airbrush because this is just a better look. I mean, come on, let's just be honest. It already has a flat finish. It already looks like the real deal. It looks thick and heavy and matted on like it's been through a few flights, and if I screw up, I don't have to mess with it much. I can literally take the whole thing with just a cotton swab, and it takes about 10 minutes to do instead of farting around with PSI and all that crap. So yeah, just the best option. Next, I do some white for some soot, and just to try and make it look like some gas stains there. I know they make some blue. I have the blue. So I'm willing to attempt to do like white and blue on maybe my next aircraft, maybe a Mustang, as they had some blue tint to their oil stains, and orange as well. So definitely want to mess around more with this stuff and apply some more shades. But over top this green, I don't think you'd see very much blue hue. I don't know. I thought that this 3-step process to exhaust stains is pretty simple, pretty easy, and pretty much anybody could do it. And that's the way I like to share modeling. I think that some people are really good at doing really high detail work, in which probably 10% of us would attempt, and other people like me, I just like to find easy ways to model to make it fun for everybody, and to make sure that everyone's having a good time with the hobby, because getting down in the weeds with some of these airplanes that are really tricky and doing all this detail work can really set you back in wanting to do more of those types of projects. It's there for some people, and it's not for others, but I think everyone should have an equal chance to be able to produce something really spectacular, and I just try to portray that on my channel. And that's why I love using this dirt stuff. So here I'm using the brown and tan as a mix, and I'm just rubbing it on and rubbing it off, just multiple times, several different times. Next, I can finally apply these landing gear. This is one of the best steps for me. It's also one of the most nerve-wracking, as a lot of my aircraft's landing gear have broken, and I don't know if it's user error, but there's some steps I miss in doing these landing gear. I think I didn't do it on this one. I didn't break landing gear on this one, but there are steps that I miss on other builds that really could have cleaned the insides out so they fit in better, and a number of different things. Basically, but didn't happen on this one because this is a Tamiya build and everything fit in really, really nicely. Next, I can put these crossbars in, and the last bit of antennas. I don't know what that is. I honestly have no idea. It's a cool little ding-a-ling there. And finally, the tires. Now, the tires I did all off camera, but basically I painted them black and did all the razor cutting to the seams and everything, and then weathered them the same way I weathered everything else on the build. And they went on really, really nicely. There is a little bit of an angle you have to put into these tires to make sure that it sits on the ground flat. So what I do is I do a big glob of super glue on the ends of those tires. I then flip it right over, pop it on the ground, and look at it just while it's on and see what type of angle I have going on, and just basically adjust from there. And then I flip it right back over and let it dry for 24 hours. And then I don't touch it for 24 hours, and I know that it's going to be safe to put on the stand on its landing gear when it's done after 24 hours. And here I am just readjusting those landing gear to where they're perfectly in sync and they're not crooked landing gear, because it definitely does bug me when there's crooked landing gear. Next, I'm applying Easy Line. It is actually Easy Line for model railroads, but it's also for airplanes. Basically, this is some rubber stuff, and it is really, really nice to use on airplanes. It's super easy to use. I just dab a little bit of super glue, and I use my tweezers there to tie it around stuff that I can and push it into holes that I drilled on the aircraft. And then I use an X-Acto knife to cut the excess. Guys, I just want to take a couple minutes and just thank you guys. If you made it through this whole video, I appreciate you. I thank you with all my heart. I love this hobby. I love sharing it with you guys, and I just appreciate every single view, every subscription. Sign up if you want to dive into deeper videos the first Saturday of the month, and let's get back to building. Enjoy the photos.